Welcome to the Sleep Archive. It's been a long day. It's time to relax. If you fall asleep, that's the point. This video will keep going for hours. Tonight, we tune our mental receivers to a specific frequency found on the bulky cable boxes of the late 1990s and early 2000s. We are returning to the golden age of Cartoon Network. It was an era defined by a checkerboard logo and the soft humming radiation of a cathode ray tube television set. Do you remember the feeling of a Friday night during this time? The school week was dissolved, replaced by the anticipation of cartoons. The living room carpet felt softer. The air smelled of microwaved popcorn and artificial cheese dust, and the world outside the window ceased to matter. This was not just a television channel. It was a sanctuary of ink and paint, a vibrant, chaotic, and oddly comforting universe that seemed to operate on its own logic. From the industrial clanking of the factory bumpers to the serene, deep space isolation of Toonami, we are stepping back into a world where animation grew up alongside us. Number 1 begins with the checkerboard identity. Before the characters themselves became icons, the channel established a profound psychological footprint through its branding. In the early days, specifically the mid-90s, Cartoon Network was visually defined by a stark, monochromatic aesthetic, black and white tiles that looked like an endless chessboard wrapping around the world. This wasn't accidental. It was a deliberate contrast to the neon-soaked, frenetic energy of its competitors like Nickelodeon. The checkerboard era felt almost institutional, yet subversive, often accompanied by jazz soundtracks or odd, discordant audio samples that gave the station a mature, almost underground atmosphere. It felt less like a children's playground and more like a secret club. When you saw those tiles slide across the screen, often revealing the faces of classic Hanna-Barbera characters recontextualized in modern settings, it created a sense of continuity. It suggested that cartoons were not just disposable entertainment, but a legacy, a continuous fabric of animation history that was being woven right before your eyes in the glow of the television set. Number 2 explores the midnight shift of Space Ghost. There is a distinct memory shared by many insomniacs of this era, falling asleep to cartoons and waking up to something strange, surreal, and slightly unsettling. This was the domain of Space Ghost Coast to Coast. This show was a crucial pivot point in the network's history, representing the first true bridge between children's programming and the adult surrealism that would later become Adult Swim. Utilizing recycled animation cells from a serious 1960s action cartoon, the creators built a talk show that felt like a fever dream. The low-fidelity animation, where Space Ghost would simply sit behind a desk while a live-action monitor displayed a bewildered celebrity guest, created a jarring, hypnotic rhythm. The awkward pauses, the nonsensical questions, and the ambient hum of the Ghost Planet studio created a mood of beautiful isolation. It taught a generation of viewers that irony and deconstruction could be funny, and that late at night, the rules of television and reality itself could be comfortably broken. Number 3 focuses on the Tartakovsky aesthetic, specifically through Dexter's Laboratory. When this show premiered, it fundamentally shifted the visual language of television animation. Prior to this, many cartoons chased a certain level of realism or soft edges, but Dexter's Laboratory embraced a design philosophy rooted in UPA-style mid-century modern art. The lines were thick and bold, the backgrounds were abstract and geometric, and the motion was snappy rather than fluid. There was a specific rhythmic satisfaction to the way Dexter moved, stiff, precise, and mechanical, matching the industrial nature of his immense, secret laboratory. The show captured the intense privacy of childhood imagination. We all have a version of that laboratory in our minds, a space of infinite potential hidden just behind a bookshelf or under a bed. The hum of Dexter's machines and the glowing button panels evoked a sense of technological wonder that felt tangible, making the viewer feel as though they too were hiding a massive glowing secret from the rest of the ordinary world. Number 4 highlights the Powerhouse era. If you closed your eyes and thought of Cartoon Network in the late 90s, you would likely hear a very specific piece of music. This era was defined by a branding package known as Powerhouse, named after the frenetic, rhythmic jazz composition by Raymond Scott that underscored the bumpers. The visual identity shifted to solid, bright colors, usually a flat, alarming yellow or a deep, industrial blue, mixed with black silhouettes of characters working in a factory. The concept was simple but effective. Cartoon Network was a factory, and cartoons were the product. Watching characters like the Powerpuff Girls or Johnny Bravo operating levers, turning gears, and mixing colors in a stylized assembly line gave the channel a cohesive, working-class narrative. It made the viewing experience feel industrious. The rhythmic, driving beat of the Powerhouse track became a Pavlovian trigger for happiness. When you heard that mechanical, jazzy loop, you knew you were safely ensconced in the block of programming that defined your afternoon. Number 5 drifts into the atmosphere of Toonami. For many, the transition from late afternoon to early evening was marked by the deep, resonant voice of a robot named Tom. Toonami wasn't just a block of anime. It was a curated mood piece with a very specific, melancholic atmosphere. The host, Tom, lived on a spaceship called the Absolution, drifting endlessly through the cosmos. Between episodes of Dragon Ball Z or Gundam Wing, we were treated to shots of the ship's interior, cold metal, blinking lights, and the vast, starry void outside the windows. The soundtrack was a down-tempo blend of drum and bass and trip-hop, creating a laid-back, sophisticated vibe that was entirely unique to children's television. It treated the viewer with respect, suggesting that we were capable of handling serialized, dramatic storytelling and complex emotions. Watching Toonami felt like sitting in the cockpit of that spaceship, safe inside a metal shell. Watching the universe drift by while stories of heroes and robots played out on the monitors. Number 6 examines the sugar-coated brutality of the Powerpuff Girls. Visually, this show was a masterpiece of contrast. The creator, Craig McCracken, utilized a rounded, thick-lined style that looked almost like stickers peeled off a sheet. The color palette was deliberately soft, pastels of pink, baby blue, and lime green, which lulled the viewer into a sense of sweetness. However, this was juxtaposed against a backdrop of surprising violence and monster movie tropes. The city of Townsville was a character in itself, often depicted in wide panoramic shots that showed a metropolis constantly under siege. The narrator, with his breathless, enthusiastic delivery, framed every episode as a dire emergency. There was a distinct texture to the backgrounds, often featuring abstract shapes and hearts that paid homage to the psychedelic art of the 1960s and the Beatles' Yellow Submarine. It was a show that managed to be undeniably cute, while simultaneously carrying the weight of a superhero action epic, blurring the lines between girl cartoons and boy cartoons until the distinction became irrelevant. Number 7 descends into The Isolation of Courage, the Cowardly Dog. Few shows have ever captured the feeling of rural isolation as effectively as this one. The setting, simply known as Nowhere, was a flat, desolate, dusty plain that stretched endlessly in all directions, broken only by a single farmhouse. The background art often used mixed media, combining hand-drawn elements with photographic textures of wood, dirt, and sky, which gave the world an unsettling, hyper-real quality. The sound design was sparse, the wind was always howling, floorboards were always creaking, and the silence was heavy. This atmosphere tapped into a primal fear, the feeling of being small and defenseless in a world that is large, empty, and indifferent. The show explored the concept that for a dog or a child, the world is full of inexplicable terrors, and bravery isn't about not being afraid, but about acting in spite of the terror. The eerie, muted color palette of browns, grays, and purples created a permanent twilight that felt like a bad dream you couldn't wake up from. Number 8 feels the texture of Ed N. Eddy. There is a tactile sensation associated with this show that is unlike any other. The animation style utilized a technique called boiling lines, where the outlines of the characters and objects were constantly shimmering and wiggling, even when they were standing still. This gave the show a restless, kinetic energy, as if the very air in the cul-de-sac was vibrating with the heat of an endless summer vacation. The show took place in a timeless suburbia where adults were non-existent silhouettes and the laws of physics were suggestions at best. The sound effects were visceral, the squelch of mud, the crash of wood, the stretching of jawbreakers. It captured the grimy, sticky reality of boyhood. You could almost feel the heat radiating off the asphalt of the cul-de-sac and smell the cut grass. It was a world of tree houses, scrap wood, and endless schemes, perfectly encapsulating the feeling of a long, aimless afternoon where the only goal was to find something, anything, to do. Number 9 struts with the swagger of Johnny Bravo. In a lineup of children's characters, Johnny Bravo was an anomaly. He was an adult man, yet he functioned with the delusional confidence of a child. The show was a stylistic love letter to the 1950s greaser aesthetic, filtered through the lens of 90s irony. The thick black outlines and angular character designs emphasized Johnny's exaggerated physique, particularly his immense triangular upper body and impossibly large pompadour. The show was surprisingly dialogue-heavy and filled with pop culture references that often flew over the heads of its target audience. It operated on a rhythm of setup and failure. Johnny's swagger was always immediately undercut by reality. The whoosh of his hair comb and the clack of his poses became iconic audio cues. It taught us about the absurdity of performative masculinity before we even knew what that term meant, presenting a character who was lovable precisely because he was a caricature of coolness who could never actually win. Number 10 contemplates the cinematic silence of Samurai Jack. When Samurai Jack arrived, it quieted the noise of the entire channel. It was one of the first animated series to boldly utilize a widescreen aspect ratio and to frequently forego dialogue entirely. Episodes would often go for 10 or 15 minutes with nothing but the sound of wind, footsteps, and clashing steel. The background art was stripped of black outlines, using blocks of color and light to create vast, painterly landscapes that felt ancient and futuristic simultaneously. The pacing was deliberate and slow, requiring patience from the viewer. It didn't treat attention spans as short. It demanded you lean in and watch. The silence was a texture in itself, making the sudden bursts of action feel incredibly impactful. Watching Samurai Jack late at night felt less like watching a cartoon and more like witnessing a visual poem, a lonely journey through a beautiful dystopian future that was as mesmerizing as it was melancholy. Number 11 explores the macabre charm of the grim adventures of Billy and Mandy. In a landscape dominated by bright colors and moral lessons, this show introduced a generation to the aesthetic of the gothic and the absurd. The art direction was singular. It utilized thick, heavy black outlines and a color palette often dominated by sickly greens, purples, and decayed browns, creating a world that felt perpetually autumnal. The central premise, that the Grim Reaper, the literal embodiment of death, was trapped in eternal servitude to two children, was a masterclass in dark comedy. It demystified the concept of death, turning a terrifying skeletal figure into a Jamaican-accented straight man who just wanted to play limbo. The textures in the show were notable. The backgrounds often featured warped perspectives and gnarled trees, paying homage to German expressionism, yet filtered through a chaotic, slapstick lens. It allowed children to dip their toes into the horror genre in a way that felt safe, wrapping the grotesque in a layer of cynical humor that felt surprisingly adult. It was a celebration of the weird, the slimy, and the supernatural, validating the tastes of the strange kid in the back of the class. Number 12 recalls the temporal shift of the Boomerang block. Before it became a standalone channel, Boomerang was a programming block that felt like a portal to a different dimension. Airing usually late at night or early on weekend mornings, it was where the shiny digital newness of the 90s faded into the scratchy film grain warmth of the 1960s and 70s. Watching the Flintstones, the Jetsons, or Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? During these hours felt like unearthing a time capsule. The audio quality of these older shows was distinct. It had a compressed mid-range hum, and the laugh tracks sounded like ghosts from a bygone era. The animation was limited, relying on repeating backgrounds, the same chair, the same window, the same tree passing by again and again. This repetition was not a flaw. It was a hypnotic feature that induced a state of comfort. It connected the modern viewer to their parents' childhoods, creating a silent, intergenerational bond in the living room. The bumpers for this block often featured vintage toys and mid-century modern furniture, reinforcing the feeling that you were visiting a museum of animation, a quiet place where the past was always looping. Number 13 dissects the grotesque surrealism of Cow and Chicken. If Dexter's Laboratory was about geometric precision, Cow and Chicken was about fluidity and mess. The visual style of this show was intentionally ugly, embracing a gross-out aesthetic that was fascinating to look at. The ink lines were thin and scratchy, often looking like they were drawn with a nervous hand. The backgrounds resembled water-stained paper, giving the world a dirty, lived-in texture. The show frequently utilized extreme close-ups of bloodshot eyes, throbbing veins, and udders, reveling in the biological weirdness of its characters. It operated on dream logic. The parents were only ever seen as pairs of legs, and the antagonist, the red guy, was a flamboyant devil who bounced on his buttocks. It was a rebellion against the cute standard of cartoons. Watching it felt like looking at a caricature artist's sketchbook, distorted, loud, and deeply weird. It captured the confusing, sometimes gross reality of the physical world, presenting a suburban nightmare that was as hilarious as it was unsettling. Number 14 celebrates the social ritual of Cartoon Fridays. There was a specific energy that filled the house when the clock struck 7 p.m. on a Friday. This wasn't just a block of television, it was a weekly event that dictated the social calendar of millions of children. The branding for CCF was revolutionary because it broke the fourth wall. The bumpers featured the characters from different shows interacting with each other in a white, minimal void. Seeing Johnny Bravo flirting with Daphne from Scooby-Doo or Dexter arguing with Mojo Jojo created a unified cinematic universe long before that concept became a Hollywood staple. It made the channel feel like a physical place where these characters lived and worked together. The host segments gave the evening a live, spontaneous feel, as if the cartoons were being broadcast in real time. It marked the definitive end of the school week and the beginning of freedom, creating a Pavlovian association between that specific white background and the feeling of absolute relief and joy. Number 15 observes the vector revolution of Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. As the mid-2000s approached, the texture of the channel began to change, and this show was the harbinger of that shift. It was one of the first major series to utilize flash animation and later Harmony in a way that looked polished and television-ready. Gone were the cell dust and the hand-painted imperfections of the 90s. In their place were crisp, infinitely scalable lines and flat, perfect colors. The design of the house itself was a marvel of Victorian Gothic architecture, filled with intricate details, staircases that went nowhere, and pipes that snaked through the walls. The contrast between the simple, blob-like design of blue and the hyper-detailed, texture-rich backgrounds created a unique visual depth. The motion was smooth and tweened, lacking the boiling lines of Ed, Edda and Eddie, but gaining a fluid, digital grace. It represented the moment the analog world gave way to the digital, a cleaner, brighter, but perhaps slightly colder future for animation. Number 16 listens to the indie spirit of the groovies. In the spaces between shows, Cartoon Network often aired short music videos that felt like experimental art films. These were called groovies, and they were instrumental in shaping the musical taste of a generation. They took existing tracks from alternative and indie bands, like Soul Coughing's Rolling, or the Apples in Stereo's Signal in the Sky, and paired them with custom animation or re-edited footage of classic Hanna-Barbera cartoons. The Rolling video, featuring a loop of the Flintstones' car wheels and Betty Rubble, transformed a banal cartoon moment into a hypnotic, rhythmic, visual loop. It was a collision of high art and low culture. These shorts didn't sell toys, they sold a vibe. They were cool, understated, and often aired late at night, making the viewer feel like they had stumbled upon a pirate radio station broadcasting on a cartoon frequency. It introduced the idea that cartoons could be set to drum and bass or indie pop, expanding the sonic palette of the network beyond orchestral scores and sound effects. Number 17 logs into the virtual melancholy of Code Lyoko. Although it was a French acquisition, this show became a staple of the weekday afternoon Miguzi block. It stood out because of its stark visual duality. The scenes set in the real world were traditional 2D animation, often washed in muted earth tones of the boarding school. However, when the characters virtualized into the digital world of Lyoko, the show switched to early 3D CGI. At the time, this 3D animation felt cutting-edge, vast, and strangely empty. The digital world was comprised of floating platforms in an endless void, emphasizing a sense of isolation and danger. The monsters were silent, geometric horrors. The show dealt with heavy themes of artificial intelligence and the threat of a digital apocalypse, all hidden under the guise of an action adventure. The theme song, A World Without Danger, became an anthem. There was a pervasive sadness to the show, the burden of a secret war fought by children who could never tell the adults what they were going through, emphasizing the loneliness of the digital age. Number 18 analyzes the anime fusion of Teen Titans. This series represented a cultural merger. While it was a Western superhero show based on DC Comics, its visual language was entirely indebted to Japanese anime. The characters would snap into chibi forms for comedic effect, sweat drops would appear on their heads, and speed lines emphasized action. This was one of the first times mainstream American animation fully metabolized the aesthetic of the East. But beyond the visuals, Teen Titans captured the specific angst of adolescence. The color palette was moody, often set at night or in the dim light of the Titans' tower. The theme song, performed by the Japanese pop duo Puffy Amiyumi, was an earworm that bridged the Pacific. The show wasn't afraid of silence or shadows, particularly in the arcs involving Slade. It treated its teenage audience with maturity, suggesting that heroes could be traumatized, that friendships could fracture, and that growing up was a battle just as difficult as fighting a supervillain. Number 19 strolls through the CN City era. In the mid-2000s, the network underwent a massive rebranding effort that is now looked back upon as the peak of its graphic design. The CN City bumpers used high-quality 3D CGI to build a realistic, sprawling metropolis where all the cartoon characters lived as neighbors. The lighting in these bumpers was photorealistic, sunsets reflecting off wet pavement, the glow of streetlights, the shadows of alleyways. You might see Samurai Jack waiting at a laundromat next to Johnny Bravo, or the Powerpuff Girls stopping at a traffic light. It grounded these fantastical characters in a tangible reality. It gave the impression that when the episode ended, the characters didn't just vanish, they clocked out and went home to their apartments in this city. It provided a sense of continuity and community, a cozy feeling that despite the chaos of the individual shows, everyone was part of the same neighborhood. It turned the channel into a destination, a place you could visit just by turning on the TV. Number 20 constructs the analog tech of Codename, Kids Next Door. in an increasingly digital world, K&D was a celebration of tactile analog engineering. The aesthetic of the show was defined by 2x4 technology, gadgets and weapons cobbled together from scrap wood, duct tape, soup cans, and hamster wheels. The sound design was filled with clanking, creaking, and the whirring of makeshift motors. It captured the specific creativity of childhood play, where a cardboard box is a fortress and a strainer is a helmet. The Treehouse headquarters was the ultimate architectural fantasy, a sprawling wooden complex that defied gravity. The show also solidified a strict generational warfare mythology: kids versus adults, teenagers. It took the feeling of being small and powerless and inverted it, creating a global paramilitary organization run by children. The operative numbers, number 1, number 2, etc., gave it a sense of order and legacy. It was a show that smelled like sawdust and old basements, reminding us of a time when technology was something you could build with your own hands in the backyard. Number 21 uncovers the crude origins of what a cartoon. Before the polished empires of Dexter's Laboratory or the Powerpuff Girls were built, there was a chaotic testing ground known as the world premiere Toons. Watching these pilots now is like looking at the sketches in a master artist's notebook. The animation was often rougher, the voice acting slightly different, and the character designs not quite finalized. It was an experimental anthology that turned the channel into a democracy of ink. Viewers were invited to call in and vote for which short should become a full series, giving the audience a rare sense of agency. The What a Cartoon show had a distinct, frantic energy, often featuring a generic, exploding neon background that screamed mid-90s attitude. It was a place where style triumphed over substance, and where the singular vision of a creator was prioritized over corporate synergy. It felt like a film festival for children, a messy, vibrant showcase that proved that the next big thing could come from a 7-minute short about a boy genius or a cowardly dog. Number 22 meditates on the silent war of Star Wars, Clone Wars. In 2003, years before the CGI series took over, Genndy Tartakovsky released a micro-series that aired in 3-minute bursts. This was a masterclass in visual storytelling that stripped the Star Wars galaxy of its politics and dialogue, leaving only the raw, kinetic essence of war. The animation was jagged and sharp, utilizing the same bold design philosophy as Samurai Jack. We watched Jedi Master Mace Windu dismantle an entire droid army using only the Force and his bare hands. A sequence that contained almost no spoken words, only the rhythmic humming of lightsabers and the crushing of metal. These shorts aired during commercial breaks, feeling less like a TV show and more like urgent, intercepted transmissions from the front lines. It gave the Clone Wars a scale and intensity that even the films struggled to match, presenting the Jedi not as diplomats, but as mythological warriors moving with the speed and precision of a pen stroke. Number 23 processes the data of whatever happened to Robot Jones. This show was a nostalgia trip within a nostalgia trip, a series made in the early 2000s that obsessively recreated the texture of the early 1980s. The art style mimicked the scratchy, hand-drawn look of Schoolhouse Rock, and the color palette was a washed-out spectrum of browns, oranges, and avocado greens. But the most distinct element was the voice of the protagonist. In the first season, Robot Jones did not have a human voice actor. His dialogue was generated by a legitimate text-to-speech program from the era. This flat, monotonic synthesis created an uncanny, delightful contrast with the emotional outbursts of the human characters. It captured the specific social anxiety of middle school, the feeling of being an alien in a hostile environment, trying to process the illogical data of gym class and crushes. The show felt like a dusty VHS tape found in the back of a closet, a relic of a future that never quite happened. Number 24 logs into the digital economy of cartoon orbit. For a brief shining moment in the early 2000s, Cartoon Network created a digital playground that felt more important than the real world. Cartoon Orbit was an online trading card game, but to call it a game sells it short. It was a functioning economy. You collected C-Toons, which were essentially digital stickers of characters, props, and scenes. The G-Toons were the playable cards, but the real thrill was the collecting. We spent hours refreshing the website, waiting for a rare drop, or negotiating trades in the chat rooms. It was many children's first introduction to the concepts of scarcity, value, and digital ownership. The sound of the Orbit interface, a futuristic, bubbling click, is burned into the memories of those who played. It created a sense of ownership over the channel. You didn't just watch Ed, and Eddie. You owned a digital asset of the jawbreaker they coveted. It blurred the line between viewer and participant, making the website a mandatory extension of the television screen. Number 25 confronts the primal fear of the dawn is your enemy. Late at night, when the programming day was technically over and the channel was transitioning its broadcast cycle, a specific bumper would sometimes air. It featured a rudimentary animation of the sun, blinking with a human eye, accompanied by a low, ominous drone and the text, "The dawn is your enemy." For a child who had stayed up too late, this was a moment of genuine, inexplicable horror. It wasn't advertising a show. It wasn't a joke. It felt like a glitch in the Matrix. A direct message from the void telling you that you had ventured too deep into the night. The stark contrast between the colorful, friendly cartoons and this cold, threatening piece of abstract art created a lasting psychological scar. It was a reminder that the people running the channel had a dark sense of humor, and that the comforting glow of the TV could turn on you when the rest of the world was asleep. Number 26 salutes the widescreen grandeur of Justice League. When Justice League premiered, it didn't look like a Saturday morning cartoon. It looked like primetime cinema. The opening sequence alone was a declaration of intent. It was one of the first animated intros to be rendered in early CGI, featuring silhouetted heroes standing against a grand orchestral score that felt Olympic in its scope. The show treated its characters not as colorful merch movers, but as modern pantheon gods. The writing was dense, the stakes were often global, and the animation used deep shadows and dynamic lighting that borrowed heavily from film noir. Watching it felt like graduating to the big kid table. The interplay between Batman's brooding silence and the Flash's humor created a team dynamic that became the definitive version of these characters for a generation. It was serious, respectful, and visually sweeping, proving that superheroes could be treated with the same gravitas as any live-action drama. Number 27 signals the Adult Swim transition. There was a specific moment every night, usually around 10 or 11 p.m, when the vibe of the channel shifted tectonically. This was the All Kids Out of the Pool bumper. The screen would fade to black, and we would hear the voice of a lifeguard blowing a whistle and announcing that the pool was closed to children. It was a brilliant metaphor. It drew a definitive line in the sand. If you stayed watching past this point, you were entering forbidden territory. The branding for Adult Swim was minimal: white text on black screens, footage of elderly people swimming, or abstract photography of empty pools. The music was lo-fi hip-hop and down-tempo beats. It felt like sneaking into a party you weren't invited to. The feeling of watching that first Adult Swim logo appear was a mix of guilt and excitement, a rite of passage where the comforting world of cartoons twisted into something surreal, ironic, and explicitly for the grown-ups. Number 28 descends into the bunker of Miguzi. Following the retirement of Toonami as an afternoon block, Cartoon Network introduced Miguzi. The aesthetic here was entirely different. Instead of a spaceship, we were taken underwater into a submerged vessel or bunker. The host, a CGI creature named Erin, who looked like a jovial alien panda, presided over the controls. While Toonami was cool and distant, Miguzi was bright, energetic, and slightly claustrophobic. The block was defined by its coming up next transitions, where show logos would slide through pneumatic tubes or appear on holographic displays. It felt like a secret hideout located deep beneath the ocean's surface. The lineup, featuring Code Lyoko, Totally Spies, and Teen Titans, had a distinctly international flavor. The underwater theme, complete with bubbling sound effects and aquatic lighting, gave the afternoon block a cozy, submerged feeling, as if we were all hiding out in a submarine to watch cartoons, while the real world floated miles above us. Number 29 appreciates the painted skies of the Powerpuff Girls. While the characters in this show were simple geometric shapes with thick outlines, the background art was a marvel of mid-century modern design. The artists used a technique that mimicked the look of gouache painting, creating soft, texture-rich environments that contrasted with the sharp characters. The skies over the city of Townsville were rarely blue. They were often bruised purples, radioactive greens, or apocalyptic reds. The buildings were monolithic slabs of concrete and glass, creating a skyline that felt massive and imposing. This artistic choice gave the show a unique atmosphere. It felt like a candy-colored dystopia. The interiors of the Utonium home, with their Eames-inspired furniture and abstract wall art, educated the viewer's eye on 1950s aesthetics without them even realizing it. It was a show that understood that cute did not have to mean simple, and that a background could tell as much of a story as the characters standing in front of it. Number 30 tunes into the sonic assault of Gundam Wing. For many, the introduction to the concept of anime music came from the ending credits of Gundam Wing on Toonami. The track, Just Communication, by 2Mix, was a high-energy J-pop anthem that sounded like nothing else on American television. It was synthesizers, drum machines, and passionate Japanese vocals. But more than the music, it was the visuals of the intro and outro, glossy, high-fashion shots of the pilots looking moody and windswept, that captivated viewers. It presented the pilots not just as soldiers, but as heartthrobs. as tragic figures. The sheer volume of the Toonami broadcast seemed to increase during these segments. The clash of the giant Gundam robots, accompanied by the beam saber sound effects and the melodramatic speeches about peace and war, created a space opera that felt incredibly sophisticated. It was sleek, it was loud, and it was undeniably cool, turning the act of watching a robot cartoon into a stylistic statement. Number 31 remembers the literal humor of sheep in the big city. This show was a stylistic anomaly, a creation of Mo Willems that felt more like a New Yorker comic strip brought to life than a standard Saturday morning cartoon. The aesthetic was defined by its unapologetic flatness. The characters were stiff, angular cutouts, moving against backgrounds that looked like abstract theatrical sets. But the true nostalgia lies in its sophisticated, often meta-textual writing. It didn't just break the fourth wall, it dismantled the entire building. The show was obsessed with the literal. A character named General Specific was driven by a specific goal, while Private Public was just a face in the crowd. The ranting Swede segments provided a bizarre, non-sequitur rhythm that felt like a precursor to internet humor. The show had a quiet, intellectual buzz to it, devoid of the frantic screaming of its peers. It invited the viewer to read between the lines, offering a dry, witty cynicism that felt incredibly modern. It was a show that trusted you to get the joke, even if the joke was simply a sheep standing silently in a bustling metropolis. Number 32 revs the engine of Mega's XLR. In the pantheon of mecha cartoons, which were usually serious space operas, Mega's XLR was a love letter to the grime and grease of New Jersey. It replaced the sleek, high-tech cockpits of Gundam with the dashboard of a 1970 muscle car, complete with fuzzy dice and a slushy cup holder. The show had a distinct texture of heavy metal and motor oil. The robot, Megas, didn't move with grace. It moved with weight, crashing through buildings and stepping on cars, treating the destruction of the city as a mundane inconvenience. The color palette was dominated by the bright red of the car and the neon greens of the alien enemies, set against the grey industrial backdrop of Jersey City. It spoke to the gamer identity before it was a marketing demographic, framing the piloting of a giant robot not as a military duty, but as a video game where you just mashed buttons until something cool happened. It celebrated the slacker hero, the guy who saves the world simply because the aliens interrupted his video game time. Number 33 catalogues the prop bumpers. There was a specific era of channel branding where Cartoon Network blurred the lines between animation and reality by placing cartoon props into live-action settings. You might see a frantic, real-world camera pan across a messy bedroom to reveal one of Ed's black-labeled jars, or a shot of a real school locker opening to show a picture of Johnny Bravo. These bumpers were masterclasses in environmental storytelling. They didn't show the characters, they showed the evidence of the characters. Seeing a plank of wood with a face drawn on it, plank from Ed and Eddie, sitting on a real park bench gave the viewer a jolt of recognition. It made the cartoons feel tangible, as if these characters were invisible roommates living in our world. The lighting in these spots was often naturalistic and soft, creating a cozy, lived-in atmosphere. It reinforced the idea that the channel wasn't just a broadcaster, but a physical space where these objects existed, just waiting to be found by an observant child. Number 34 travels through the blue vortex of Time Squad. Visually, Time Squad was defined by a clean, retro-futuristic aesthetic that borrowed heavily from the 1960s vision of the future. The characters wore color-coded jumpsuits, and the Time Squad satellite was a masterpiece of white curves and glowing blue panels. The show's premise, traveling back in time to force historical figures to fulfill their destinies, was executed with a cynical, bureaucratic charm. History wasn't majestic. It was a mess that needed to be cleaned up by a grumpy cop, a flamboyant robot, and an orphan. The background art often featured monochromatic, blueprint-style drawings of historical settings, creating a sharp contrast with the bright, cel-shaded characters. The show had a specific, hollow sound design inside the satellite, a hum of air conditioning and sliding doors that emphasized the isolation of the trio. It taught us a subversive version of history where great men were actually incompetent fools, and the only thing keeping the timeline together was a stressed-out man in a uniform. Number 35 listens to the synth rock of the Dragon Ball Z Falconer score. While the original Japanese audio of Dragon Ball Z used a brass-heavy orchestral score, the version that aired on Toonami was defined by the music of Bruce Falconer. This soundtrack was a relentless driving wall of synthesizer noise, heavy metal guitars, and ambient bells. It completely transformed the mood of the show. The Super Saiyan transformation theme, with its slow, bell-like build-up exploding into a frantic electronic crescendo, became the sonic definition of power for a generation. The music didn't just support the action, it created a trance-like state. The constant, low-level drone of the synths during dialogue scenes added a layer of tension and sci-fi gravity that the original lacked. It made the battles feel colder, more alien, and infinitely more intense. For many, the memory of Goku powering up is not visual, but auditory. A rising electronic whine that signaled the earth was shaking and the speakers on the television were about to blow. Number 36 isolates the island quiet of Mike, Lou, and Og. In a lineup of loud, frantic shows, Mike, Lou, and Og was a vacation. The pacing was deliberately lethargic, mirroring the slow, sun-drenched days on a desert island. The art style was scratchy and loose, evoking the feeling of a sketchbook doodle drawn in the sand. The color palette was washed out, faded yellows, sandy beiges, and pale blues, making the screen feel like it was radiating heat. There was a distinct lack of background music in many scenes. Instead, the audio was filled with the ambient sounds of the ocean, the wind in the palm trees, and the crunch of footsteps on sand. This sensory deprivation was relaxing. It captured the specific boredom of being stuck somewhere with nothing to do but invent your own fun. It was a show about culture clash and the simple, often disappointing reality of paradise, delivered with a dry wit that felt like a gentle, tropical breeze blowing through the living room. Number 37, Files Emotion with Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law. This show was a foundational text in the remix culture of the early 2000s. It took the stiff, limited animation of 1960s Hanna-Barbera superheroes and repurposed it for a mundane office comedy. The visual joke was constant. The majestic, golden-winged Birdman was now trapped in a fluorescent-lit law firm, dealing with copyright infringement and restraining orders. The contrast between the heroic, booming voices of the characters and the petty, bureaucratic nature of their problems was the source of the humor. The backgrounds were often photorealistic or highly detailed paintings of offices, which clashed beautifully with the flat, low-budget character cells. The pacing was rapid-fire, filled with awkward silences and abrupt cuts. It deconstructed our childhood heroes, showing them as flawed, neurotic, and employed. It was a late-night education in irony, teaching us that even superheroes have to pay rent and deal with a boss who is literally insane. Number 38 stands in the noir reign of the Big O. Even among the curated cool of Toonami, the Big O stood apart as a masterpiece of style. It was essentially Batman meets Giant Robo, filtered through a 1940s film noir lens. The show was visually dominated by shadows, rain, and Art Deco architecture. The Paradigm City was a place of amnesia, a dome-covered metropolis where no one remembered anything before 40 years ago. The protagonist, Roger Smith, was the epitome of suave, a negotiator who wore all black and drove a massive luxury car. The giant robot battles were slow and heavy. You could feel the immense weight of the metal as the Big O punched through the fog. The soundtrack was a moody blend of jazz, saxophone, and orchestral swells that felt sophisticated and tragic. It was a show that prioritized atmosphere over plot, immersing the viewer in a world of mystery, rain-slicked streets, and the melancholic beauty of a city that had lost its memory. Number 39 attends the summer camp of Camp Laszlo. Created by the same mind behind Rocko's Modern Life, this show brought a very specific texture to the mid-2000s. The earthy, organic feel of a Boy Scout camp. The character designs were reminiscent of jelly beans, rounded, colorful, and soft. The backgrounds were lush and painterly, filled with the deep greens of the forest and the rustic browns of log cabins. The show managed to capture the sticky, humid feeling of summer vacation. The sound design was crucial. It was filled with the buzzing of flies, the splash of lake water, and the crackle of campfires. It explored the social hierarchy of childhood in a setting stripped of technology. The relationship between the optimistic Laszlo and the neurotic Scoutmaster Lumpus provided a classic dynamic of chaos versus order. It was a show that smelled like pine needles and burnt marshmallows, a comforting reminder of the freedom and dirtiness of the great outdoors. Number 40 unearths the lost CGI of the Moxie show. Before the channel had a vast library of originals, there was Moxie. This is a memory that feels almost like a hallucination to those who recall it. Moxie was a CGI dog animated in real time using motion capture technology that was primitive by today's standards, but revolutionary in the mid-90s. The character looked rough, polygonal, jerky, and floating against a static background. He acted as a host, introducing classic cartoons with a manic, biting energy. The show had a raw, pirate broadcast feel, as if Moxie had hijacked the signal. Because the technology was live, there were glitches and awkward movements that gave it an eerie, experimental quality. It represents the Wild West era of the channel, a time when they were willing to try anything to build an identity. Moxie is largely lost media now, existing only in grainy VHS rips, making him a ghost in the machine, a digital phantom from the dawn of the network. Number 41 sails into the grotesque beauty of the marvelous misadventures of Flapjack. This show marked a significant aesthetic turning point for the network, moving away from the sharp vector lines of the mid-2000s towards something much more organic and unsettling. The visual texture of Stormalong Harbour was visceral. You could practically smell the brine, the rotting wood, and the sugary syrup. The show is infamous for its gross-ups, highly detailed, hyper-realistic paintings of hideous expressions, insects, or grime that would flash on screen for a comedic shock. It borrowed heavily from the aesthetic of 19th century scrimshaw and Victorian medical illustrations, creating a world that was simultaneously cozy and repulsive. The sound design was wet and squishy, emphasizing the tactile grossness of the setting. It felt like a fever dream born from eating too much candy before bed. Beneath the bizarre visuals, however, was a surprisingly sweet story about optimism in a cynical world, with Flapjack serving as a beacon of pure innocence amidst the pirates, criminals, and literal sea monsters that populated the dark, oil-painted corners of the dock. Number 42 tastes the patterned fabric of chowder. Visually, chowder achieved something that had arguably never been done effectively in television animation before. The characters' clothing did not move with them. Instead, their silhouettes were windows into a static, scrolling pattern in the background. If Chowder walked forward, the purple pattern of his clothes stayed still, creating a mesmerizing, unmoving plaid effect that gave the show a distinct storybook quality. The world of Marzipan City was a culinary wonderland designed with soft, rounded shapes and a color palette that looked like a spilled bag of spices, saffrons, lavenders, and neon pinks. The show broke the fourth wall constantly, with characters acknowledging that they were running out of animation budget or talking directly to the voice actors. It felt like a living puppet show. The emphasis on food textures, the steam rising from a dish, the glisten of a glaze, the crunch of a weird ingredient, made it a sensory experience that triggered a kind of visual hunger, blending mixed media to create a world that looked good enough to eat. Number 43 activates the transformation sequence of Ben 10. In 2005, the network found its answer to the superhero craze, but grounded it in the universal fantasy of a cool wristwatch. The central appeal of Ben 10 wasn't just the aliens, it was the mechanism of the Omnitrix itself. The sound of the dial turning, a heavy, mechanical click, and the green flash of the transformation became iconic sensory cues. The show captured the specific road trip atmosphere of Americana. RV parks, dusty highways, and roadside diners, all seen through the eyes of a bickering family. Unlike the sleek, darker tone of Batman, this felt like a summer vacation gone sci-fi. The aliens were designed with a biological plausibility that fascinated children. They had specific strengths, weaknesses, and textures, from the magma rock of Heat Blast to the slimy viscosity of Stinkfly. It tapped into the collector's mindset, turning the protagonist into a walking deck of cards, where the thrill was seeing which hero would be selected to solve the problem. Number 44 jams with Class of 3000. This series was a rare and vibrant experiment in celebrity collaboration, created by Andre 3000 of Outkast. It brought a soulful, southern hip-hop aesthetic to a channel dominated by rock and orchestral scores. The visual style was loose and fluid, with characters that moved with a rhythmic bounce, looking like sketches from a high-fashion notebook come to life. The color palette was explosive, utilizing bright, primary colors that felt like a reaction against the moody grays of the superhero shows. But the core nostalgia lies in the music. Each episode featured an original song that blended jazz, funk, and rap, treating the audience with immense musical respect. It didn't sound like kids' music. It sounded like the radio. The setting of Atlanta was rendered with a loving, magical realism, turning the city into a character itself. It was a show about the joy of creativity, teaching a generation that art isn't about perfection, but about finding your own rhythm and playing it loud. Number 45 identifies the nudes era. In 2008, Cartoon Network underwent a rebrand that stripped away the complex city environments in favor of radical simplicity. The new mascots were called nudes, small, white, earless, armless figurines that looked like peg dolls. The genius of this campaign was that the nudes could project any character onto their blank surfaces. You would see a nude texture mapped with Chowder's pattern, or Batman's cowl, or a texture of grass. They would bounce, slide, and bump into each other in a clean, white void. This era felt lighter, more playful, and distinctly digital. It coincided with the rise of the app aesthetic, clean lines, bright colors, and simple shapes. The bumpers were often accompanied by upbeat, indie pop instrumentals that felt modern and fresh. It unified the channel's increasingly fractured identity. Whether it was a serious action show or a slapstick comedy, every character was equalized when they were reduced to a bouncing, happy little nude. Number 46 tours with Hi Hi Puffy Amiyumi. Based on the real-life Japanese pop-rock duo Puffy Amiyumi, this show was a colorful explosion of cool Japan marketing imported for Western audiences. It leaned heavily into the SD, super deformed anime aesthetic, where characters have massive heads and tiny bodies. The show was a sensory overload of flowers, hearts, and musical notes floating across the screen in a constant state of motion. It blended live-action segments of the real band with the animated world, blurring the lines of reality. The dialogue was peppered with Japanese phrases, introducing many American children to a second language for the first time. The vibe was relentlessly positive and energetic, capturing the feeling of a sugar rush. It wasn't about saving the world or learning a lesson. It was about the aesthetic of being a rock star, the tour bus, the fans, the guitars, and the fashion. It was style over substance in the best possible way, a 22-minute music video that never ended. Number 47 investigates the Cartoon Network Invaded event. In May 2007, the network orchestrated a massive, interconnected crossover event that is remembered as a peak of cable TV ambition. 5 different shows, Foster's, Ed, Ed and Eddie, My Gym Partner's a Monkey, Camp Laszlo, and Grim and Evil, all aired episodes on the same night involving an alien invasion. What made this nostalgic was the feeling of a shared universe. The alien characters appeared in the background of each show, creating a narrative thread that demanded you watch the entire block to understand the full story. It turned television watching into a scavenger hunt. The bumpers between the episodes featured an alien intelligence interrupting the broadcast, creating a sense of urgency and liveness. It was a marketing stunt, yes, but to a child, It felt like a global crisis was unfolding across their favorite worlds. It rewarded the loyal viewer who knew the lore of every show, creating a communal water cooler moment for the playground the next morning. Number 48 patrols with the life and times of Juniper Lee. This show captured the specific urban fantasy vibe of the mid-2000s, blending the chosen one trope with the mundane frustrations of middle school. Visually, it was crisp and angular, with a thick-lined style that felt like a comic book. The setting of Orchid Bay was a vibrant, multicultural city that felt lived in and modern, a sharp contrast to the generic suburbia of other cartoons. The show explored the burden of responsibility. Juniper couldn't just have fun because she had to maintain the balance between the magical and human worlds. The monsters were often drawn from folklore, but given a modern twist. Trolls running internet cafes, or demons wanting to watch TV. It had a girl power energy that was less performative than some of its peers. Juniper was simply competent, tired, and trying her best. It feels nostalgic now as a representation of that pre-smartphone era where kids roamed the city on bikes, hiding magical secrets in the alleyways of the shopping mall. Number 49 recalls the Tickle You experiment. There is a strange, almost fever dream quality to the memory of Tickle You, a short-lived preschool block that aired in the mornings around 2005. It represents a rare misstep in the channel's history, and thus, a fascination for archivists. The host was a CGI character named Pipoca, and the programming was intended to improve humor and optimism in toddlers. The shows, like Firehouse Tales or Gerald McBoing Boing, had a distinctively softer, slower, and arguably stranger vibe than the rest of the network. It felt like stumbling into a different channel entirely. The aesthetic was bright red and yellow, aggressive in its cheerfulness. It didn't last long, and its disappearance felt like a collective hallucination. Remembering it now evokes the feeling of staying home sick from school and being too delirious to change the channel, forced to watch programming that felt slightly off-kilter, a bizarro world version of the Cartoon Network we knew and loved. Number 50 uncovers the secret Saturdays. Toward the end of the 2000s, the channel swung back toward pulp adventure with this series. It was a love letter to cryptozoology, the study of hidden animals like Bigfoot and the chupacabra. The art style was heavily influenced by the comic book artist Alex Toth, featuring deep blacks, sharp shadows, and a warm, retro color palette of oranges and teals. It felt like an old adventure serial from the 1960s, updated for the modern era. The Saturday family were not superheroes, but scientists and explorers, which gave the action a different flavor. It was about discovery and preservation, rather than just fighting. The show had a texture of mystery and globe-trotting grandeur, taking viewers from the jungles of Brazil to the ice of Antarctica. It tapped into the same vein as Indiana Jones, offering a sophisticated, slightly darker world where myths were real and the edges of the map were filled with monsters. Number 51 excavates the forgotten half of Grim and Evil. Before the grim adventures of Billy and Mandy conquered the world, it was merely one component of a two-part show called Grim and Evil. The other half, Evil Con Carne, remains a cult curiosity of the early 2000s. It featured a brain in a jar, Hector Con Carne, attached to the body of a circus bear, striving for world domination. The aesthetic was a brilliant parody of Silver Age comic books and James Bond villains, yet filtered through a heavy, murky atmosphere of shadows and military bunkers. The show had a distinct, tragic undertone. Hector was a brilliant tactician reduced to a biological absurdity, constantly thwarted by his own physical limitations. The color palette was darker than its sister show, utilizing deep crimsons, metallic grays, and military greens. It feels nostalgic because it represents the experimental phase of a hit, a time when the network was willing to package two completely different tones together, asking the audience to switch gears from supernatural farce to sci-fi action comedy in the blink of an eye. Number 52 logs into the digital decay of Fusion Fall. In 2009, Cartoon Network launched a massive multiplayer online game that reimagined its entire roster of characters for a darker, teen-rated audience. The premise of Fusion Fall was surprisingly grim. The Cartoon Network universe was being consumed by a green alien matter called Planet Fusion. The nostalgia hits hardest when remembering the redesigns of the characters. We saw a version of Dexter who was no longer a boy genius, but a hardened resistance fighter with a beard and a shotgun. The Powerpuff Girls were floating, silent sentinels protecting the ruins of the city. The game world was vast and empty, filled with the corruption of familiar landmarks, like the Ed and Eddie cul-de-sac covered in green slime. The soundtrack was a mix of techno and orchestral swells that emphasized the urgency of the war. It was a shared hallucination of a grown-up cartoon world, giving us the chance to physically walk through the settings we had only ever watched on a screen. Number 53 endures the reality satire of Total Drama Island. Arriving in the late 2000s, this show was a cultural mirror, reflecting the explosion of reality television that had taken over the adult airwaves. It was drawn in flash animation, giving it a crisp, vector-based look that was clean and modern. The genius of the show was its commitment to the format. The shaky cam, the confessional booth, the black and white flashbacks, and the dramatic musical stings were all replicated perfectly. It introduced a cast of stereotypes: the goth, the jock, the prep, the delinquent, and then slowly deconstructed them over the course of the season. The humor was surprisingly mature, dealing with relationships, betrayal, and gross-out challenges in a way that felt edgier than standard fare. For many viewers, this was their introduction to serialized drama. You couldn't just miss an episode, you had to know who was voted off. It turned the passive act of watching cartoons into an active sport of picking sides and rooting for winners. Number 54 recoils from the trauma of King Ramses. Within the library of Courage the Cowardly Dog, there is one specific episode that scarred an entire generation: King Ramses' Curse. The horror of this episode stemmed from a clash of art styles. While the world of Courage was hand-drawn and textured, the ghost of King Ramses was a crude, early CGI model that looked completely out of place. He stood in the distance, stiff and unmoving, while a haunting, windswept voice chanted, "Return the slab." The dissonance between the 2D farmhouse and this 3D intruder created an uncanny valley effect that was genuinely terrifying. The emptiness of the background, the purple night sky, and the endless dust focused all attention on this unnatural figure. It was a masterclass in minimalism. There were no jump scares, just a slow, creeping dread. It remains a shared touchstone of fear, a reminder that the most frightening things are often the ones that simply do not belong. Number 55 flies through the neo-Gotham of Batman Beyond. When this show aired on Toonami, it offered a vision of the future that was sleek, cynical, and impossibly cool. It took the Art Deco noir of Batman, the animated series, and injected it with cyberpunk DNA. The sky was no longer red. The city was a towering vertical labyrinth of black metal and neon holograms. The soundtrack shifted from orchestral to heavy industrial rock and electronica, mirroring the pulsing nightlife of the city. The suit itself was a marvel of design, solid black with a glowing red emblem, stripping away the cape to create a silhouette that looked like a shadow coming to life. It explored themes of legacy and aging, showing us a Bruce Wayne who was broken and bitter. For a young audience, this was a sophisticated introduction to the cyberpunk genre, teaching us that the future might be technologically advanced, but it would still be lonely, rainy, and in need of a hero. Number 56 survives the CN Real experiment. In 2009, the network made a controversial pivot that is now remembered with a mix of confusion and disdain. They began airing live-action reality shows. Series like Destroy, Build, Destroy and Dude, What Would Happen replaced the animated blocks. The aesthetic of the channel shifted from the polished nudes to a gritty, loud, and chaotic style featuring explosions and slime. To the purist, this felt like an invasion. The station that was the sanctuary for animation was suddenly broadcasting teenagers blowing up school buses in a desert. However, there is a nostalgia for the sheer strangeness of this era. It represents the Dark Age, a time when the identity of the channel fractured. Looking back, it serves as a contrast that makes us appreciate the animation renaissance that followed Adventure Time even more. It was a moment where the network tried to grow up too fast, only to realize that its true heart lay in ink and paint, not in reality. Number 57 observes the endurance of the Iron Giant marathon. There is a specific memory of turning on Cartoon Network on a holiday, perhaps Thanksgiving or Independence Day, and finding the Iron Giant playing, and then, 2 hours later, finding it playing again and again. The 24 hours of the Iron Giant marathons were a testament to the network's faith in this single film. It became a ritual. The film itself, with its beautiful 1950s autumn setting and its heart-wrenching story of a robot with a soul, fit the channel's aesthetic perfectly. The repetition turned the movie into ambient art. You could walk into the living room at any point in the day and catch a different part of the story. It reinforced the film's status as a cult classic. The sound of the giant's heavy metallic footsteps and the jazz-infused score became the background noise of the entire holiday, creating a cozy, looping atmosphere of Cold War paranoia and childhood wonder. Number 58 matures with Ben 10, Alien Force. 5 years after the original series, the network took a risk. They allowed their hero to grow up. Alien Force presented a Ben Tennyson who was 15, responsible, and jacketless. The art style shifted dramatically from the bright, soft shapes of the original to a darker, sharper, and more standardized comic book aesthetic. The setting was almost exclusively nocturnal. Missions took place in dark parking lots, abandoned warehouses, and moonlit forests. The color palette was dominated by deep greens and blacks. This shift acknowledged that the audience was growing up too. The tone was more serious, dealing with themes of leadership, death, and complex intergalactic politics. The hybrid invasion arc provided a serialized story that felt weighty. It was a validation of the viewer's maturity, saying, "You aren't a kid anymore, and neither is he." It was a moody, atmospheric sequel that felt like The Empire Strikes Back to the originals, A New Hope. Number 59 dances to the Interstellar 55555 event. One night, Toonami did something that felt less like television and more like a rave. They aired Interstellar 5555, the anime musical film set to Daft Punk's Discovery album. There was no dialogue, only the thumping house beats of One More Time and Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger. The visuals, designed by the legendary Leiji Matsumoto, featured blue-skinned aliens and golden spaceships, paying homage to 70s anime aesthetics. Watching this late at night was a hypnotic experience. The synchronization of the animation with the electronic music created a sensory flow that was pure euphoria. It broke every rule of narrative television, trusting the audience to follow a story told entirely through song and gesture. It was a cultural bridge, connecting the anime community with the electronic music scene, and for one night, it turned the glow of the CRT TV into a private nightclub for the lonely and the cool. Number 60 salutes the fall of Toonami. On September 20th, 2008, a transmission ended. After 11 years, the Toonami block was cancelled. The final broadcast was a moment of genuine televised grief. Tom 3, the host we had grown up with, delivered a final monologue that was surprisingly emotional. He didn't talk down to us, he thanked us. "Bang," he said, echoing the Cowboy Bebop finale before the ship flew into the sunset. The screen faded to a simple title card. For many, this marked the definitive end of their childhood. The routine of coming home and checking in with the absolution was over. The silence that followed felt heavy. It wasn't just a programming block change. It was the dismantling of a ritual. That specific Saturday night feeling of action, anime, and drum and bass evaporated, leaving a void in the schedule that would take years to fill again. It remains a touchstone memory, a moment where we realized that even the things that felt eternal could eventually go offline. Number 61 contemplates the purgatory hypothesis. Among the many fan theories that circulated on early internet forums, one specific conspiracy regarding Ed and Eddie has persisted due to its eerie plausibility. The theory suggests that the cul-de-sac is not a real place, but a form of purgatory, and that each character died in a different era of the 20th century. This explains their strangely anachronistic tongues, which are green, purple, and yellow, resembling the colors of decaying corpses, and the total absence of adults. The theory posits that the endless summer is literal. The season never changes because time has stopped for them. Rolf represents the immigrant laborers of the early 1900s, while Eddie represents the greed of the Great Depression era. While the creator, Danny Antonucci, has debunked this, the theory adds a layer of melancholic depth to the show. It recontextualizes the frantic energy of the Eds, not as childhood mischief, but as souls trying to find meaning and connection in a static, timeless afterlife where the sun never sets and the school year never begins. Number 62 takes a seat in the cartoon theatre. Weekend evenings were often anchored by a specific programming block that felt like a grand event: cartoon theatre. The intro sequence is a core memory for many. It featured a cinematic tracking shot moving through a stylized Art Deco movie palace, passing by concession stands run by cartoon characters before settling into a plush red seat. The screen within the screen would then illuminate, signaling the start of a feature-length film like The Iron Giant or Batman, Mask of the Phantasm. This bumper did something important. It elevated the medium. It told the child viewer that what they were about to watch wasn't just another TV episode. It was cinema. It was a film. The atmosphere of the bumper, with its dim lighting and hushed anticipation, successfully replicated the feeling of being in a movie theatre, turning the living room carpet into the front row of a premiere, complete with the smell of imaginary buttered popcorn. Number 63 mourns the cancellation of Symbionic Titan. This fact touches on the harsh reality of the television business that often crushed artistic ambition. Genndy Tartakovsky's Symbionic Titan was a masterpiece of visual storytelling, blending high school drama with giant robot action in a way that felt emotionally resonant and stylistically distinct. However, it was abruptly cancelled after one season. The official reason given by executives was not low ratings, but that the show didn't sell enough toys. This moment was a wake-up call for the audience, a realization that the art they loved was ultimately a vehicle for merchandise. The show featured complex character designs and serialized storytelling that didn't translate easily to plastic action figures. Its cancellation remains a sore spot in the network's history, a symbol of the dark ages where corporate synergy took precedence over narrative quality, leaving a beautiful, unfinished story drifting in the void of cancellation. Number 64 casts a vote in the Big Pick. In the summer of 2000 and 2001, Cartoon Network conducted a massive democratic experiment known as the Big Pick. They aired pilots for several potential new shows and asked the viewers to call in or go online to vote for which one should be greenlit for a full series. This was a brilliant engagement strategy. It pitted the grim slapstick of the grim adventures of Billy and Mandy against the retro futurism of Robot Jones and the absurdity of Longhair and Double Dome. It gave children a tangible sense of control over the channel's destiny. We weren't just consumers, we were programming directors. The weekend of the marathon felt tense, like election night. When Billy and Mandy won, it felt like a collective victory for the weird kids. It solidified a bond between the network and its audience, fostering a sense of ownership that is rare in modern media. Number 65 unlocks the legend of rude removal. For over a decade, this was the holy grail of Cartoon Network lost media. Rumors persisted on playgrounds and message boards about a banned episode of Dexter's Laboratory where the characters swore. It sounded like an urban legend, but it was real. Produced in the late 90s, the segment featured Dexter and Dee Dee having their rude behavioral traits removed, creating two foul-mouthed clones. The clones unleashed a tirade of bleeped profanity, a shock to the system for a children's show. It was never aired on television due to standards and practices, but its existence was whispered about for years. When it was finally released online by Adult Swim in 2013, it was a moment of closure. It confirmed that the creators were in on the joke, pushing boundaries behind the scenes, and that the squeaky clean image of the network hid a rebellious, punk rock spirit. Number 66 confronts the ambiguity of things change. The finale of the original Teen Titans series is one of the most controversial and artistically bold endings in children's television history. Instead of a grand final battle, the episode focused on Beast Boy, discovering that Terra, a character who had tragically died, had apparently returned as a normal schoolgirl with no memory of the team. The episode is a quiet, painful meditation on moving on. There is no villain defeated. There is no happy reunion. Beast Boy has to accept that things change, that people leave, and that you cannot force the past to return. The final shot is not of the team posing triumphantly, but of Beast Boy running into the light to join his friends for a new fight, leaving Terra behind. It left many viewers confused and angry at the time, but in retrospect, it was a profound lesson about the lack of closure in real life. Number 67 tunes into the JBVO experiment. In a bizarre fusion of animation and live interaction, there was a short-lived show called JBVO, hosted by Johnny Bravo. This wasn't a pre-recorded cartoon. It was a call-in request show where a crudely animated Johnny would take calls from real children in real time. Viewers would request a specific cartoon, and Johnny would play it. The technology was similar to that of the Moxie show, but the tone was pure Bravo. Seeing Johnny struggle to understand a mumbling child on the phone, or making fun of a request for a girl show, created a chaotic, unscripted energy. It broke the barrier between the cartoon world and the living room. It felt like Johnny was actually sitting in a studio in Atlanta, bored and taking calls. It was a fleeting moment of interactive television that felt incredibly futuristic at the time, even if the animation was glitchy and stiff. Number 68 expands the roster of Justice League Unlimited. If the original Justice League was a team show, Unlimited was a universe show. The opening credits alone were a statement of scale, featuring dozens of heroes flying in formation. The nostalgia here lies in the "who's that" factor. The show dipped deep into DC Comics lore, pulling obscure characters like The Question, Hawk and Dove, and Vigilante out of the archives and giving them distinct personalities. It made the world feel populated. The Watchtower wasn't just a base, it was a bustling city in orbit, filled with cafeteria conversations and hallway drama. The Cadmus story arc, which dealt with government paranoia and the potential for heroes to become tyrants, was a political thriller disguised as a Saturday morning cartoon. It treated the viewer with immense respect, assuming we could follow a complex web of alliances and betrayals that spanned dozens of episodes. Number 69 captures the Pokémon migration. For the first few years of the craze, Pokémon was the crown jewel of the competitor, Kids WB. However, when the anime eventually moved its primary broadcasting home to Cartoon Network, it signaled a massive shift in the landscape. It was an acquisition that changed the texture of the afternoon block. The bright digital colors of the Diamond and Pearl era brought a different energy to the channel. Watching Ash Ketchum on Cartoon Network felt strange at first, like seeing a friend from school in a different neighborhood. It marked the moment when Cartoon Network effectively monopolized the boy action demographic. The Miguzi block and later scheduling became dominated by the sounds of Pokeballs opening and the high-pitched cries of the creatures, cementing the network not just as a home for Western animation, but as the primary importer of Japanese pop culture for the American living room. Number 70 rebrands to the Check It era. In 2010, the nudes were retired and the network entered the Check It era. This branding package is nostalgic for the younger end of the millennial generation and older Gen Z. It utilized the CMYK color model, cyan, magenta, yellow, and key, black, incorporating slippery, glossy 3D graphics and a checkerboard motif that paid homage to the original 90s look, but with a modern twist. The bumpers were fast-paced, high energy, and featured famous characters appearing as 3D block figures. This era coincided with the renaissance of the channel, the arrival of Adventure Time, Regular Show, and the Amazing World of Gumball. The Check It aesthetic was clean, loud, and confident. It shared the grungy, industrial feel of the early 2000s in favor of a polished, graphic design-heavy look that felt perfectly synchronized with the rise of smartphones and app icons. It was the visual language of a new golden age. Number 71 recalls the marathon endurance of June bugs. Before streaming allowed for binge watching, Cartoon Network curated massive endurance tests known as marathons, and the June Bugs event was the mountaintop. For one entire weekend in June, the channel would air every single Bugs Bunny cartoon ever made, in chronological order. There was a scholarly weight to this event. We watched the character evolve in real time, shifting from the crude, squat rabbit of the late 1930s into the sleek, sophisticated trickster of the Chuck Jones era. The marathon ran continuously, day and night. Waking up at 3 a.m. to see a black and white Looney Tune from 1941 flickering on the screen felt like intercepting a broadcast from history. It taught us the scope of the medium's legacy. The sheer volume of content, hundreds of shorts, created a hypnotic effect, blurring the lines between the separate cartoons until the entire weekend became a single, chaotic struggle between a rabbit and a hunter, playing out in an endless loop of slapstick violence. Number 72 lights the jack-o'-lantern for Scary Godmother. For a specific micro-generation, Halloween did not officially begin until this special aired. Scary Godmother, Halloween. Spooktacular was a computer-animated special that, by modern standards, looks incredibly rough. The animation was stiff, the textures were flat, and the character movements were floaty. Yet, this jankiness is exactly what makes it nostalgic. It gave the production a surreal, dreamlike quality that fit the holiday perfectly. The story of Hannah Marie being terrorized by her cousin Jimmy, only to be befriended by a witch and her monster roommates, was the ultimate cozy horror comfort food. The color palette was a vibrant explosion of neon orange, slime green, and deep purple. It captured the feeling of a Halloween party where the decorations are cheap, but the atmosphere is magical. It wasn't about being truly scared. It was about the aesthetic of the season, a digital haunted house that we visited faithfully every October. Number 73 enters the code for the Master Control sweepstakes. There was no fantasy more potent for a child in the early 2000s than the promise of Master Control. This was a recurring contest where the winner would supposedly be flown to the Cartoon Network headquarters in Atlanta, to take control of the broadcast for a day. The commercials for this event showed a child sitting in a futuristic, circular room surrounded by wall-to-wall screens, pressing big glowing buttons to decide which cartoon aired next. It gamified the act of watching television. It made the channel feel like a machine that could be driven. Even if you didn't win, the mere existence of the contest sparked playground debates about what the perfect schedule would look like. It empowered the viewer, suggesting that the flow of cartoons wasn't decided by suits in a boardroom, but by a lucky kid, just like you, who happened to have the keys to the castle. Number 74 visits the general store of Big Bag. Buried deep in the subconscious of 90s kids is a show that feels less like a memory and more like a fever dream. Big Bag was a preschool program created by the Sesame Workshop, featuring a mix of puppetry and animation. The setting was a general store run by a human named Chelly and a puppet dog named Bag. The nostalgia here comes from the show's strange, handcrafted aesthetic. The pacing was incredibly slow and gentle, a stark contrast to the mania of Dexter or Powerpuff Girls. It often aired early in the morning, creating a quiet, transitional space between sleep and the start of the real cartoons. The puppet design of Bag, a shaggy, mop-like creature, was charmingly low budget. It represents a time when the channel was still figuring out its identity, willing to air gentle, educational content that felt like a calm, dusty corner of a world that was about to get much louder. Number 75 attends the Dexter's Laboratory Ego Trip premiere. This television movie was a monumental event because it broke the status quo. In a medium where characters rarely aged or changed, Ego Trip dared to show us the future. The plot involved Dexter traveling forward in time to meet his teenage, adult, and elderly selves to save the future of science. Seeing the designs of the older Dexters was a revelation. Number 12, the cowardly office drone version of Dexter, was a terrifying glimpse into a mediocre adulthood, while the muscular, heroic future Dexter was a pure power fantasy. The film had a cinematic scope, culminating in a battle against a league of mandarks. It felt darker and more serious than a standard episode. The ending, which created a time loop, introduced many young viewers to complex sci-fi paradoxes. It was the first time the network treated one of its cartoons with the gravity of a feature film, proving that these 11-minute comedies could sustain an epic narrative. Number 76 hums the cartoons audio mnemonic. Sound is a powerful trigger for nostalgia, and few sounds are as evocative as the cartoons logo bumper. It appeared at the end of every original show, a white screen with the Cartoon Network logo, followed by a ripple effect of colourful concentric circles, red, blue, and yellow. The accompanying sound was a quick, rhythmic orchestral flourish, da-da-da-da-da, sometimes followed by a playful sound effect like a boing or a crash. This 3-second sequence was the seal of quality. It was the period at the end of the sentence. Hearing it meant you had just finished watching something homegrown and original. It unified shows that were vastly different in style: Courage, Johnny Bravo, Cow and Chicken, under a single sonic banner. That ripple animation is burned into the retinas of an entire generation, a Pavlovian signal that the story was over, but the brand was strong. Number 77 crosses over with the Gorillas. In a moment of supreme coolness, the virtual band Gorillaz intersected with the world of Cartoon Network in the early 2000s. To promote their debut album, the network aired shorts where the band members, 2D, Murdoch, Noodle, and Russell, took over the broadcast booth. Seeing Murdoch Nichols, a grimy, Satanist bass player, interacting with the Powerpuff Girls or complaining about the programming was a surreal collision of worlds. It validated the adult edge of the channel. The animation styles meshed perfectly. The Jamie Hewlett character designs looked right at home next to Samurai Jack. It introduced millions of children to alternative hip-hop and Britpop, serving as a gateway drug to cooler musical tastes. It felt illicit, like the older, cooler cousins had broken into the studio and were playing their weird records over the intercom. Number 78 survives the Naruto headband era. When Naruto premiered on Toonami in 2005, it didn't just become a popular show. It altered the fashion of the American middle school. The Hidden Leaf Village headband became a ubiquitous accessory. The show brought a serialized, melodramatic intensity that Dragon Ball Z had started, but Naruto made it personal. It was about loneliness, ostracization, and the desperate need for acknowledgement, themes that resonated deeply with pre-teens. The opening theme songs, performed by Japanese rock bands like Asian Kung Fu Generation, were left in their original Japanese, training American ears to appreciate foreign lyrics. The ninja run, arms swept back, torso forward, migrated from the screen to the playground. It was a cultural phenomenon that marked the peak of the weeb integration into the mainstream, proving that a story about a loud orange-clad ninja could define the social hierarchy of an entire generation. Number 79 drives the track in Cartoon Network racing. Before crossovers were common in cinema, video games were the primary venue for seeing characters from different universes interact. Cartoon Network racing for the PlayStation 2 and GameCube was a physical manifestation of the channel's community. It wasn't the best racing game ever made, but the novelty of driving a go-kart as Johnny Bravo against Dexter in the streets of Townsville was intoxicating. The game included Toonami-style power-ups and tracks based on cow and chicken and courage. It solidified the geography of the Cartoon Network universe in the player's mind. It turned the passive activity of watching into an active competition. The menus were filled with the same Powerhouse jazz aesthetic as the channel, making the game feel like an interactive extension of the broadcast. It was a chaotic, glitchy celebration of the roster, allowing us to settle the who would win debates on the virtual asphalt. Number 80 remembers the summer 2005 pool bumpers. There was a specific summer where the channel branding reached a peak of cozy vibes. The bumpers featured all the characters attending a massive pool party. You saw Blue from Foster's splashing number 1 from KND, while Grimm sat under a parasol trying to avoid the sun. The lighting in these animated spots was warm and golden, mimicking the late afternoon sun of July. They aired constantly between shows, reinforcing the feeling that the characters were on summer vacation just like you. It created a parasocial relationship with the entire network. It felt like you were hanging out at the pool with friends. The water effects were shimmering and inviting. It captured the essence of a perfect, endless summer day. Chlorine, heat, and cartoons. freezing that specific moment in time when the biggest worry was what show was coming on next. Number 81 attends the opera of Dexter's Laboratory. In an episode titled Libretto, the show abandoned its usual format to tell the tragic origin story of Dexter's creation entirely through opera. This was a daring stylistic pivot for a children's cartoon. The dialogue was replaced by recitative singing, and the score was a dramatic, orchestral pastiche of classical music. It elevated the petty sibling rivalry between Dexter and Dee Dee to the level of high art, framing their conflict as a mythological struggle. The visual direction matched the grandeur of the music, with dramatic lighting and stage-like compositions. It was a moment where the showrunners flexed their creative muscles, proving that the medium of animation could handle sophisticated, experimental storytelling. Watching it felt like sneaking into a theater. It was confusing, slightly pretentious, and utterly mesmerizing, teaching us that even the smallest stories could be told with the gravitas of a tragedy. Number 82 confronts the blue nightmare of courage, the cowardly dog. Even amidst the gallery of horrors that was this show, the series finale's perfect segment stands out as a singular moment of trauma. In a dream sequence, Courage encounters a softly spoken, poorly rendered 3D blue creature that resembles a fetus or a bug. The creature stares directly at the viewer and whispers, "You're not perfect." The dissonance of the art style, the clash between the hand-drawn dog and this cold, digital aberration, created a feeling of intense violation. It wasn't a monster chasing you. It was a manifestation of insecurity. The silence surrounding the scene, broken only by the creature's calm, judgmental voice, made it feel incredibly intimate and invasive. It remains one of the most discussed moments in the channel's history, a psychological scar that reminded us that the pursuit of perfection is a terrifying, lonely, and ultimately unnatural endeavor. Number 83 clocks in with the Friday's live hosts. In the mid-2000s, the Cartoon Fridays block evolved into simply Fridays, and the animated host segments were replaced by live-action skits featuring human hosts, most notably Tommy and Niven. This shift marked a distinct change in the channel's energy. It tried to replicate the hanging out in a basement vibe of Wayne's World or TRL. The set was a messy, colourful loft filled with beanbag chairs and pop culture memorabilia. While it lacked the magic of seeing the cartoons interact, it created a new kind of connection. These hosts felt like the older siblings you wanted to be. Cool, funny, and deeply invested in the cartoons. They interviewed voice actors, previewed games, and read fan mail, grounding the animated block in a tangible reality. It was a bridge between the fantasy of the shows and the real lives of the audience, making Friday nights feel like a nationwide club meeting. Number 84 survives the Screwy Squirrel takeover. On April 1st, 1997, Cartoon Network executed one of the most audacious pranks in television history. For the entire day, they aired a single cartoon on a loop, the 1944 MGM short Happy Go Nutty featuring Screwy Squirrel. There was no explanation. There were no commercial breaks that acknowledged the joke. Just the same 7 minutes of a manic squirrel tormenting a dog, playing over and over again for 24 hours. For a child tuning in, it was a descent into madness. Was the TV broken? Had the channel been hijacked? The repetition transformed the cartoon from a comedy into a surrealist endurance test. It was a masterclass in trolling before the term existed, a declaration that the network was run by people who valued chaos and humor over ratings. It turned a forgotten, annoying character into a legend of broadcasting anarchy. Number 85 shrinks down with Hamtaro. As part of the morning lineup, specifically during the Miguzi or early blocks, Hamtaro offered a distinct alternative to the high-stakes action of the afternoon. The show was an exercise in kawaii culture, featuring a group of hamsters who escape their cages to go on low-stakes adventures. The scale of the world was its primary hook. Seeing the ordinary world from the perspective of a creature 2 inches tall transformed a garden into a jungle and a drain pipe into a terrifying tunnel. The ending theme, with its catchy, high-pitched Ham Hams chant, was an earworm that burrowed deep into the subconscious. It was a show about the secret lives of pets, validating the childhood suspicion that our animals have complex societies and friendships that we are completely unaware of. It was gentle, sunny, and incredibly soft, a warm blanket of a show before the bus arrived for school. Number 86 salutes the departure of Number 1, the finale of Codename Kids Next Door, titled Operation Interviews, is one of the most emotionally resonant endings in the network's archive. The series concluded with the leader, Number 1, being chosen to join the galactic kids next door, requiring him to leave Earth and his friends forever. The final goodbye scene, where he waves to his teammates from a spaceship while they stand on the treehouse balcony, was a powerful metaphor for the end of childhood. It wasn't just a mission, it was a transition. The show acknowledged that you cannot stay a kid forever, and that growing up means saying goodbye to the people who defined your youth. The flash forwards showing the team as adults, married, working, but still connected, provided a bittersweet closure. It treated the audience with maturity, accepting that moving on is painful but necessary, leaving us with a lingering sense of loss as the credits rolled. Number 87 transforms into the Art Deco of Transformers, animated. When this series premiered, it was controversial for its radical departure from the realistic style of the movies or the anime style of the Unicron trilogy. The art direction by Derek J. Wyatt was heavily influenced by the superhero designs of the Teen Titans and the angularity of Art Deco. The robots had massive chins, exaggerated proportions, and fluid, squash and stretch motion. It looked less like a toy commercial and more like a true cartoon. The colors were flat and vibrant, and the show had a distinct sense of humor that poked fun at the franchise's history. It focused on a small team of repair bots rather than a massive army, making the stakes feel personal. It feels nostalgic now because it represents a time when Western animation was confident enough to reinterpret a massive global franchise through a stylized artistic lens, prioritizing personality and expression over mechanical detail. Number 88 takes the field for the big game. In a brilliant counter-programming move, Cartoon Network would often air a special on Super Bowl Sunday known as the Big Game. This wasn't football. It was a montage of the most violent, kinetic, and competitive moments from various cartoons, edited together to look like a sporting event. They would have commentators, often characters like the host of Space Ghost, analyzing the plays, which were actually just clips of Wile E. Coyote falling off a cliff or the Powerpuff Girls fighting a monster. It turned the channel's archive into a shared athletic universe. It gave the indoor kids, those who didn't care about the actual Super Bowl, a place to belong. It was a celebration of slapstick physics, framing the chaos of animation as a legitimate sport and creating a ritual that allowed us to participate in the big game hype on our own animated terms. Number 89 opens the book of Zatch Bell. Premiering on Toonami, this anime brought a unique flavor to the battle shonen genre. It wasn't about cards or balls, it was about books. The relationship between the human partners and the Mamodo children was the emotional core. The protagonist, Zatch, was a lightning-wielding child who had lost his memory, and his partner Kyo was a cynical genius. The battles were dictated by spells that appeared in the books, which burned away as the damage accrued. The nostalgia hits hardest with the sound design, the specific electronic crackle of the lightning spells, and the shouting of Zakaruga. The show balanced intense, high-stakes combat with bizarre slapstick humor, often involving a character named Ponygon. It was a story about the fragility of friendship. When a book burned, the partner vanished instantly, creating a permanent, heartbreaking separation that gave every battle a sense of finality. Number 90 wears the watch for Ben 10, Secret of the Omnitrix. This TV movie was the Avengers moment for the Ben 10 franchise. It was promoted as a massive event, the first time the lore of the Omnitrix was fully explored. The film introduced Way Big, a colossal alien that looked like a classic Japanese tokusatsu hero, signaling a dramatic escalation in power scale. The plot, which involved the Omnitrix entering a self-destruct mode, added a ticking clock that sustained tension for the entire runtime. The animation budget was noticeably higher, with fluid action sequences and dynamic lighting effects. It feels nostalgic because it represents the peak of the show's classic era before the sequels and reboots. It was the moment Ben Tennyson transitioned from a kid with a cool gadget to a galactic savior, cementing the series as a modern pillar of the network's history alongside the 90s giants. Number 91 plays the jazz of Cowboy Bebop. If Dragon Ball Z was the muscle of Toonami, Cowboy Bebop was its soul. When this show premiered on the block, it introduced a level of cinematic sophistication that was previously unheard of in children's broadcasting. The opening credits, set to the exploding brass of Tank, commanded attention with a style that was equal parts 1960s spy thriller and 1940s jazz club. The show was drenched in a mood of existential ennui. It wasn't about saving the universe, it was about being broke, hungry, and running from the past. The dubbing is legendary, often cited as one of the few instances where the English voice cast equaled or surpassed the original. Watching Spike Spiegel lean against a wall and light a cigarette in the blue light of a spaceship monitor taught a generation about the aesthetic of cool. It was a gateway drug to cinema, to jazz, and to the understanding that sometimes the hero doesn't get the girl, and the story doesn't have a happy ending, it just carries that weight. Number 92 solves the mystery of Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island. For decades, Scooby-Doo was a show defined by safety. The monsters were always men in masks, and the scares were always fake. Then, Cartoon Network began airing Zombie Island in heavy rotation. This film fundamentally broke the rules. The tagline, "This time, the monsters are real," was not a lie. The animation was upgraded to a darker, more detailed style, with shadows that felt heavy and threatening. The zombies were grotesque, decomposing corpses that did not stop when unmasked. The bayou setting was thick with atmosphere, smelling of swamp water and decay. It terrified children because it betrayed the contract of the franchise. It took the safest characters in television history and dropped them into a legitimate horror movie. The terror we felt watching Shaggy and Scooby cornered by actual supernatural forces was visceral, making the eventual victory feel earned in a way the old episodes never did. Number 93 clicks through the Cartoon Network Summer Resort. Before social media, the summer social hub for many kids was a browser-based game on CartoonNetwork.com. Summer Resort was an episodic adventure game where you played as a generic avatar wandering through a pixelated vacation paradise populated by the channel's stars. You could converse with Johnny Bravo by the pool or help Dexter find lost items. The nostalgia lies in the limitations. The game was simple, silent, and slow to load on dial-up connections, but it felt incredibly immersive. It provided a sense of geography to the network. The different islands of the resort represented the different eras of the channel, blending them into one cohesive world. It was a digital third place where you could escape the heat of the real world to hang out in a virtual space where the only objective was to collect items and exist alongside your animated heroes. Number 94 grapples with Outlaw Star. Often overshadowed by its cousin Cowboy Bebop, Outlaw Star brought a distinct, gritty texture to the Toonami lineup. It was a space western that felt mechanical and oily. The ships didn't just fly. They had grappler arms that engaged in physical melee combat in the vacuum of space, creating a satisfying, clanking spectacle of metal on metal. The show introduced the concept of caster shells, magic bullets that were a finite resource, adding a layer of tension to every gunfight. The aesthetic was a vibrant clash of Chinese mythology and sci-fi industrialism. The opening theme, Through the Night, was a driving rock anthem that demanded to be played at maximum volume. It appealed to the viewer who wanted their space opera to be a little rougher around the edges, filled with bounty hunters, pirates, and a sense of high-stakes adventure that felt dangerous and unregulated. Number 95 reads, The text of the Adult Swim bumps. In the dead of night, the channel spoke to us directly. The transition bumpers for Adult Swim abandoned voiceovers and graphics in favor of simple white text on a black background. These bumps were unlike anything else on television. They were dry, sarcastic, and often incredibly specific. They would comment on the previous show, make fun of viewer mail, or ramble about the production team's lunch. The silence of reading them was part of the experience. It felt like a secret conversation between the broadcaster and the insomniac viewer. The music playing underneath was always a lo-fi hip-hop instrumental, a genre that would later be known as chill hop, which created a relaxed, late-night atmosphere. These text cards built a distinct personality for the network, a tired, cynical, but funny friend who was staying up late just to keep you company. Number 96 witnesses the darkness of the Powerpuff Girls movie. When the Powerpuff Girls made the leap to the big screen in 2002, the network took a gamble on tone. The film was significantly darker, grittier, and more violent than the television series. The color palette was desaturated, replacing the bright candy colors with smoky grays and bruised purples. The sequence of the girls playing tag and accidentally destroying the city was a harrowing depiction of collateral damage, showing the fear in the eyes of the citizens. It deconstructed the superhero fantasy, showing the isolation and guilt that comes with power. The villain, Mojo Jojo, was treated as a genuine threat rather than a comedic foil, leading an army of primates in a massive, chaotic war for the city. It remains a nostalgic touchstone because it treated the audience with surprising maturity, proving that even the cutest characters could tell a story about rejection, redemption, and the heavy price of being a hero. Number 97 unites the grim adventures of the KND. Crossovers were rare events, treated with the gravity of a summit meeting. The special that combined codename Kids Next Door with Billy and Mandy was a collision of two incompatible worlds. Seeing the military precision of Number 1 clash with the supernatural chaos of the Grim Reaper was a surreal delight. The art styles, one based on rounded, thick lines and the other on sharp, jagged edges, meshed in a way that highlighted the unique visual identity of the era. The plot, involving the delightful children from down the lane fusing with Billy, was a grotesque and hilarious escalation. It confirmed that all these shows existed in the same multiverse. For the viewer, it was the ultimate payoff for loyalty, a special event that rewarded you for knowing the lore of both franchises and reveling in the absurdity of seeing them break into each other's realities. Number 98, Previews, the Adventure Time pilot. Toward the very end of the 2000s, a short clip began circulating, sometimes airing as a mystery segment. It featured a boy named Penn, later Finn, and a dog named Jake saving a princess from the Ice King. The animation was looser, the humor was stranger, and the slang was mathematical. This pilot is the boundary line. It marks the end of the city era and the nudes era, and the beginning of the Renaissance. Watching it now evokes a specific kind of nostalgia. The feeling of seeing the future before it arrived. It had a rough, indie comic energy that was distinct from the polished vector art of Ben 10 or Foster's. It was the spark that would eventually ignite the next decade of animation, standing as a final chaotic gift from the 2000s to the 2010s, signaling that the rules of the channel were about to change forever. Number 99 looks up at the water tower. In the bumpers and branding of the 90s and 2000s, there was often an establishing shot of a cartoon city, and in the center stood a water tower bearing the checkerboard logo. This structure became the psychological anchor of the network. It implied that Cartoon Network was not just a channel, but a physical place. A studio lot where Bugs Bunny grabbed lunch with Samurai Jack, where the Powerpuff Girls flew past the windows of the executive offices. It gave the content a sense of origin. We imagined a factory of dreams, a Wonka-esque building where ink and paint were pumped through pipes to our televisions. That mental image of the water tower against a blue sky remains the definitive symbol of the era, a monument to a time when television felt like a destination you could visit if you only knew the way. Number 100 is the static. The broadcast day has ended. The screen flickers, the colors of the checkerboard dissolve, and we are left with the soft white noise of an empty channel. We look back at this era not just because the shows were good, but because of how they made us feel, safe, hidden, and understood. It was a time before algorithms dictated our tastes, when we all watched the same block of Toonami at the same time, united by the glow of the cathode ray tube. The smells of the carpet, the taste of the snacks, and the sound of the ending credits are now artifacts in the museum of your memory. The signal has moved on, traveling out into the deep space of the past, but the feeling remains. The archive is now closed. Sleep well and remember, you can always rewind the tape in your mind. Sleep well.